Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laura Siepko with Green Compass, and I'm a director here with Green Compass, and I am so grateful that you chose to be here with us today. The longer I've been with Green Compass and the more I talk about CBD, the more I realize how many questions are out there about CBD. And so I'm so privileged to have the opportunity to pull together this forum today to share information about what the most common questions are that we hear when we talk to people about CBD. And so what we're going to do during our 30 to 45 minutes, it really depends on how much time we discuss and have an open forum on the questions that you have, is we're going to walk through what are the questions that we have, and we're going to answer those. Then we'll open it up for Q&A for you to ask your questions, and then we'll wrap up and we'll just give you a little bit of overview of the roots of our company, where we came from, just so you understand a little bit about Green Compass. But before we do that, I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself, and then I wanted our expert who's on the line, who I'll be interviewing today, to give you a little bit of information about her background. I come from about 20 years of experience in the pharmaceutical and medical and device and diagnostic field. I held a variety of different roles there. Currently, I have two professional roles that I manage. One, I write learning and development for major healthcare companies. And then my favorite role is I'm a director, like I said, with Green Compass. And I have always loved and had a passion for wellness. And that's what brought me to Green Compass, and that's why I'm here. So with that said, I wanted to introduce Tracy Lee Young. And Tracy Lee, I'll just let you share a little bit about yourself so everyone can really understand how exciting it is to have you on this call to share your wisdom.
You're too kind. Thank you very much. I was sitting in your seat one day, had no idea about CBD and the opportunity that it can bring. I was really brought into CBD and this whole industry and world out of my family's needs. I have 8 children, and the father of my children was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in January of 2014. Now, when you hear those words, your whole world stops, right? And when I got that phone call that that's what they had found, they had decided that they were going to do a treatment of chemo that day. And when he came home, he said, I can't do that again. That's going to kill me before this cancer will. But in my mind, I'm thinking 2 months is not very much time. And so I just dug into researching what other options there were out there. And honestly, I had no idea anything about this plant. I was busy homeschooling with 8 children, and my life didn't have any room for anything called cannabis. And so in my research, that kept coming up, and we finally gave in and decided to try that route. And I'll tell you what I saw was, when you hear that you've got a terminal illness, 2 months to live, what you imagine your life is going to be like for the next little period of time is laying on the couch dying from whatever it is. And what I saw was him actually getting back into the life he was living, right? I mean, he was riding his bike and skiing and surfing and skateboarding, and we went camping and boating. And that really taught me about what benefit this plant holds. Now, I'm not making any medical claims. I'm not saying it can cure, treat, prevent, or anything miraculous, although we have seen tremendous benefit from it. So I began opening compassionate care medical clinics in April of 2015. And that's really helped me to become immersed in this whole world. And I'll share a little bit more about that in just a minute, but this has been my whole life out of that need of my family's. And what I can tell you is that with him being on incredibly high doses of CBD, he actually lived for 4.5 years and really lived his life. So I've learned a tremendous amount, and I'm excited to share.
Thank you very much for sharing that. What we'll do is, Tracy Lee and I spoke, and we just put some slides together because I know I'm a visual learner, so I need to see things to really connect. So we put some slides together to kind of guide the questions that we commonly hear. So we'll walk through those slides and she'll answer those questions. But if you have questions on your mind, please be sure to put them in the message chat on this Zoom or save them, and we will open up the floor for you to ask them. Okay, so we want to make sure that we give you the opportunity if we don't cover it in what Tracy Lee has to share. So I'm going to share my screen now. And I'm assuming we can see it. Let me just get to slideshow. Okay. So we'll just start with what is CBD and will it make me high? I've gotten that question before.
I get that question all the time. And what people don't understand is that CBD naturally occurs in the flower of the cannabis plant. Cannabis has a very rich history as a medicine. It goes back really honestly thousands of years. Today, what we're finding is that this plant holds some pretty therapeutic properties. And honestly, they're being tested all throughout the world by scientists as well as doctors. And what that's done is actually launch CBD as one of the fastest growing markets of my lifetime anyway. CBD and THC interact with our bodies in a variety of ways. So one of the main ways is by mimicking and augmenting the effects of the compounds that are in our body. They're called endogenous cannabinoids, and they're named that because they're very similar to the compounds that are found in the cannabis plant. Now, the endocannabinoids are what scientists are referring to as part of the endocannabinoid system. And that system plays a really important role in a lot of physiological processes that really affect our body and our everyday experience, whether it's our mood, our energy, our level, our intestinal fortitude. Really, and right now in this whole pandemic, it really affects our immune activity. So, if the research that's going on now with this plant had happened a little while ago, I'm curious, would this pandemic be the magnitude that it is right now, right? I mean, it can also treat things like blood pressure, bone density, think about osteoporosis and things like that. So I'm going to explain a little bit more about this plant in just a minute, but what's really important for everybody to know is that CBD is not going to make you high. CBD doesn't hold any of the psychological compounds that its kind of sister plant, the marijuana plant, holds. We're skipping all over with all these slides.
Whoops, I'm sorry. I moved too quick. There we go. I thought you were ready to move on. I apologize.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
We're doing.
Not a problem. So just to clarify the difference between hemp and marijuana. So the hemp is a term that classifies the one of the sister parts or subspecies of the cannabis plant. I like to look at it kind of as a family tree. You've got the cannabis plant, kind of that holds the mom and dad position on the family tree. And you've got two subspecies or cousins, if you will. One is the marijuana, and that is going to be a plant that contains far more than 0.3% THC. And it really can create all kinds of crazy psychotropic or euphoric effects, on whoever is utilizing it. Now, the other plant or subspecies or cousin is going to be the hemp plant. And the hemp plant is going to be very, very rich in CBD and just have trace amounts of that THC. And if you look at this slide, it's going to kind of break things down. You've got the hemp, which I said is the low THC, less than 0.3%. And that's not that we don't get to that point, that 0.3% THC, because we remove it when we process it. That's actually what that plant grows. It's very rich in the CBD, and THC is not its thing. It's not a partier. You know, I always say it's not the party plant. This one is in medical school. This one's learning to help people, and it's really wanting to be a part of some pretty dramatic effects, you know, on our health and all over benefits. Now, the marijuana plant is going to be very, very high in THC. This slide shows up to 35%, and there are newer strains that actually go up to almost 55%. Tremendous amount of THC. So you can imagine ingesting that. You're going to get all kinds of high. You're probably going to get the munchies. You're probably going to want to hug everybody in the room. And it's going to be a completely different experience. And I do believe that there are medicinal benefits to that plant, but that's not what we're focusing on. And you will never have any of those euphoric effects from utilizing, the benefits of hemp. So let's see here. We can go on to the next slide if you want.
Is CBD legal?
CBD is legal, so let's talk about what makes it legal. The Farm Bill. Now, the Farm Bill passed in January 2019, and if you're not familiar with the Farm Bill, I'll just give you a little bit of information on it. About every 5 years, Congress passes a new bill that shapes the food and agriculture, rural economies, trade, farm energy production, a whole bunch of stuff, right? Now, the 2018 Farm Bill actually legalized the production of hemp as an agricultural commodity. And what that did was it actually removed it from the list of controlled substances. So prior to this Farm Bill passing, which actually went through January 2019, it was federally illegal, which the marijuana plant today is still federally illegal, but the Farm Bill actually legalized the use of hemp because it did remove it from the Controlled Substance Act. And what that means is that it's no longer classified as a Schedule I drug. Now, to me, this is great news because what that does is it requires the Secretary of Agriculture to conduct studies of hemp-related pilot programs and other academic research in order to understand all the humongous benefits that this plant has medicinally. And I think we should have done this years ago, but I'm really glad that we're finally there. So yes, absolutely, all across the United States, it's legal.
Thank you. So this is a big one that I know that I get is how does CB work? And then you hear so many things out there about what people are using it for. So, you know, maybe some clarity on what are some of the things that it helps with.
Sure, absolutely. Well, getting a deeper understanding of the ECS and the CBD receptors is really going to take a lot more time than we have here right now. But what's really important to know is that CBD is a compound that's found in the hemp plant. And as we just stated and just on the last slide, it has no psychoactive properties, right? And so I'm going to take a few minutes and I'm going to look at some important roles that the ECS plays. Now, the ECS is the primary homeostatic regulatory system of the body. And to give you an idea as to really how the ECS helps to maintain what's called homeostasis or balance, I'm going to give you an example. So when we become stressed, our mind releases something that's called cortisol. Now, cortisol is actually the compound that's responsible for how we feel like when we get stressed, okay? And it can be very helpful when we need to react quickly in a really dangerous situation, right? That fight or flight. But what we don't understand is that too much cortisol actually disrupts the natural balance in our body and our mind. And what can happen is it could result in really serious health problems. Now, when certain endocannabinoid aids are introduced into the body, think CBD oil, it not only helps provide that stress relief that we need, but it helps to manage our perception of that stress so that we can look at whatever situation that we're in and we can look at it with a clear mind and we can really make the best decision that needs to be made. Really, it can be viewed as our body's internal adaptogenic system, right? Now, it's constantly working to maintain a wide variety of functions and equilibrium, okay? So the endocannabinoids really work as neuromodulators. Now, they can regulate a wide scope of physiological processes, anywhere from fertility to pain. Now, some of the more better known functions that are impacted by the ECS are things like memory, mood, inflammation, anxiety, pain modulation, sleep health, stress, like we just talked about, and digestion. Every one of those is vastly important, right? If any one of them isn't functioning properly, we're going to know about it. Now, we've got 11 organ systems within our body. We've got the immune system, the digestive, lymphatic, circulatory, muscular, skeletal, endocrine, nervous, renal, urinary, excretory, and respiratory. Now, that's a lot of them, and they all sound familiar, right? Everybody, you know, can think of something that maybe they've experienced in their lifetime, or somebody that they are close to that's experienced, where one of those organ systems may have had a dysfunction, right? And the result ends up being a condition that affects everyday life in a really negative way. But the endocannabinoid system really speaks to every single one of those organ systems in the body, and it can regulate every organ system by maintaining that homeostasis, or that balance in the body. Now, fun fact, there are over 121 million Americans that take some sort of pain relief every single day, right? Did you know that prescription use, well, especially during this pandemic, is on the rise? And there's more than 151 people that die every single day as just a result of some sort of opioid addiction, abuse, or recovery. And for me, that's not an option. It's just not. So looking further into this was really important to me, because I wanted to know how naturally I could benefit my body and every single one of my organ systems, so that I wouldn't necessarily have to deal with, you know, any upcoming condition or huge health trauma in my lifetime.
Great, thank you. Do you want me to move on to the next slide?
Go ahead. Yep. So we kind of went over this. These are all of the different, you know, receptors that are in the body. And the cool part about CBD oil, if you've got a really pure oil and you've got it in a very good high quality delivery system, or carrier oil, what's going to happen is when you drop that under your tongue, it's going to get absorbed into your bloodstream through the mucosal cells under your tongue. And what that means is that it's going to be able to cross the blood-brain barrier, which this slide right here speaks about. You know, we're talking about cognitive processes. We're talking about fear and anxiety and emotions, memory and learning, neuroprotection. We've seen in studies, and I don't know if anybody on this call has watched any of the YouTube videos, but there are several, and they certainly aren't clinical trials or anything like that, but they are real life experiences that people have had with seizures, mental illness, and managing things like pain and managing things like psychosis. It's unbelievable what can happen when you've got a really good oil and you are benefiting your body with it every single day. All right, let's move on.
Oh, there we go. Can we move on?
I think we kind of went over all of this. Yeah, I mean, it is like we talked about, you know, with this pandemic, the oil is going to be unbelievable. Now, homeostasis in the body, we talked about it, is balance, and the cannabinoids are going to help to create that by inhibiting the all of the negative effects of things like we talked about, right? Everything negative has an opposite and equal reaction, right? And so what we've got is homeostasis creating balance. It's going to help to trigger, enhance, and nourish all of the systems in our body, so that we don't have the negative effects of things like too much cortisol in the body when we are, and this talks about excitation of the nervous system, but really that's the release of the cortisol, right? We're in this crazy situation, and every aspect of our nervous system goes into hyperdrive. And so when you are nourishing, stimulating, and balancing your endocannabinoid receptor system, you're going to find that your entire body, every organ in your body, will end up in a state of balance. And that is that's the beautiful part about homeostasis and what CBD and the cannabinoids can do for it.
Mm-hmm. Right. This is great. Thank you so much. I hope that everyone is really valuing this great information. So CBD, is it safe? And what about drug testing?
So I get asked this often. Are there any side effects of CBD? You know, and the first slide talked about that. Am I going to get high? What's going to happen? Well, there can be side effects, and that's the truth of it, right? But it's for a very small percentage of a very small percentage of a very small group of people, really. And the side effects are very mild, and it could be due to a hypersensitivity or maybe an intolerance, not just to CBD, but maybe to some of the other compounds that are in the plant, right? So very few reports have been done. And like I said, with the Farm Bill passing, what we're going to start seeing is a lot more clinical trials, a lot more studies that are done to give us the information that we're all really hungry for, right? But the very few reports that have been done have shown to be resolved really by just stopping your use of CBD. How easy is that? Like, you know, anytime you use Western medicine, if you end up with a problem, right, or side effect of it, 9 times out of 10, they're going to prescribe you an additional medication to counteract the side effects of that medication. And you end up with lots of medications that counteract each other, and then they all have side effects. So some of these side effects that I'm talking about that can be mild would be something like nausea, maybe dry mouth, a little bit of drowsiness. Oftentimes with this small group of people, you can see a very small drop in blood pressure, or some people, you know, relate it to a lightheadedness, which is a result of that small drop in blood pressure. And really what we can do is stop taking CBD for a couple of days. We call that a reset, and then introduce it again in smaller quantities. And that's it. Those are the side effects. It really is unbelievable that you can have a plant that's got so many benefits to it with really minimal side effects for very few people. As I mentioned earlier, with the small amount of research that has been done, and the Farm Bill passing in January, we are going to start seeing, as I said, all of those tight financial restrictions with the federal government that have limited researchers' ability to study cannabis. But what's going to happen, as I believe is going to happen, is that with these new studies that are going to be coming out, we are going to see cannabidiol, which is CBD, really being more introduced into the medical community as a safe and non-intoxicating, non-addictive compound that really can be viewed as having significant therapeutic attributes. So I think we're going to start seeing more doctors. And at the moment, because I own those clinics, we don't call it prescribing, we call it recommending, but you will see more and more doctors actually recommending to their patients that they introduced cannabis, because we will start seeing it as tremendous benefit in a lot of challenges.
So let's look at the drug test question.
All right. So yes, it's going to be interesting to see how people deal with this. So you've got a lot of different options when you're ingesting CBD oil. You've got things like a CBD isolate. Now, an isolate is going to be THC free. And is that going to affect a drug test? Absolutely not. What they've done is they've actually isolated the CBD. You're not going to have any of the other terpenes. You're not going to have any of the THC, none of the other cannabinoids. You will just have CBD, and there's no way for that to trigger a drug test. So you should be just fine with that. Now, if you move into other products, things like a full spectrum, now a full spectrum is going to be beneficial because it will have that trace amount of THC in it, which will allow your body to utilize the broad benefits of having all of the cannabinoids in your body. Will it trigger a drug test? Most likely no, but it is a possibility. So if you have a job that does random drug testing and you have a concern that you may fail and it would affect your life financially or any other way negatively, I recommend an isolate. A lot of people often ask if a topical will affect a drug test. And again, it's going to be the same thing. Typically, a topical doesn't have enough THC in it to affect anything. But again, I always go back to being extra cautious. And if you have a concern that a possible random drug test would be failed, I would recommend using a topical that's got a CBD isolate in it as opposed to a full spectrum.
Great. Perfect. Okay, so let's talk about why quality is so important.
Okay. Quality is really important. And I'll tell you a little bit about my background with that as well. So in that first year with the father of my children, we were not brand specific. And what I mean by that is when it was time to go and buy more CBD, we bought whichever one either was on sale or the person behind the counter was talking about, or maybe we liked the label, or maybe it was price, or, certainly there was a lot of factors involved. And so we would, buy whatever we bought. And what I noticed throughout that year is there were certain products that he would take and he would say, oh gosh, that one burns my throat, or he would immediately come down with a headache, or he would be affected in ways that I didn't understand. And really it was because I was uneducated. And what I saw is that while he did get benefit from that CBD, each product we took, there were some that worked, some that didn't work at all, and others that had all of these different effects on him that were negative. And I didn't really understand it at the time. But then 1 year later, fast forward to me opening these compassionate care medical clinics and interacting with patients. Now, as soon as you open up a business, let's say you open up a shoe store, who knocks on your door but shoe salesmen, right? So I've got these medical clinics, and of course I've got, people coming and going with all different kinds of coupon codes or, specials or whatever it might be. And they wanted me to pass those on to my patients. And so passing on, these different codes and sales and different things to patients, I started hearing the same things. I'd have patients say, oh, no, I don't need that coupon code. I can't use those products. They burn my throat. Or, oh, no, I can't shop at that store because those products give me a headache. Or, all of the different things that I had heard with the father of my children. And so that got me thinking. And I began researching quality and started actually formulating my own products, because my whole goal in life, my mission, is to really help as many people as I can in a way that gets them back into living the life that they're living, right? And when you start formulating products, again, you get people knocking on your door, and they are CBD oil salesmen, and they want you to buy their oils for your products. And this brought on a whole new, really season of learning. And what I learned about is called a certificate of analysis. Now, when I began looking at these certificate of analysis, I didn't understand all of the information that was on it, but I started researching how to read them. Now, a certificate of analysis, if you don't know, it's a lab report, and it really breaks down the chemical makeup of any product. The certificate of analysis are used to verify the cannabinoid, the terpene, the contaminant, all the different profiles in the oil that was used to create a certain product, right? Now, the certificate of analysis is really, the goal of it is to verify that the contents of the product matches how it's advertised. And what I mean by that is, if somebody says to you, I've got this great oil, we grow it here in the US, it's organic, it's all these different things, and there's no THC in it, you want to ask for a certificate of analysis. And you can see the ones here on the screen, and it's got a list there of different cannabinoids, different terpenes. You can see that the Difficult to read, but you've got all your numbers in the middle. I always encourage people that are looking at a certificate of analysis for the first time, if a graph is available, which it is here, look at that. You've got that big dark brown line, and that is going to be your CBD content. You can see that this product has a tremendous amount of CBD, and you've got your red little line at the top, which is your THC, showing that it does have that trace amount. And then there is a little bit of, and I can't read what that one is, it CBG or CBN, but a little bit of another cannabinoid. Fantastic, right there, you've got it. Well, in that, I also learned that you've got to also be able to verify that this certificate of analysis is accurate, because what I found is that people would bring in the certificate of analysis in order to sell me their product. And the more I researched on how to read a certificate of analysis, I learned about how many companies and people out there will fabricate a certificate of analysis, or they'll alter a certificate of analysis so that the product appears to be better than it is. Now, this certificate of analysis that we've got on the screen here is extra fantastic, and I'll tell you why. Not only does it list everything that's in there, so you can see the entire profile of the oil, but you can also see a QR code there at the top. Now, it costs a little extra to do that step, but what that will allow you to do is you can actually scan that QR code, and it will take you back to that third-party testing lab's website, and you can actually look at this COA on their website. Now, it's important that a certificate of analysis is done by a third party, and the reason for that is because they get paid to run the test, right? They don't get paid a penny for how much product is sold. They get paid to do that analysis, and so there's no reason for them to alter it or fabricate it. These are the facts, this is what we found, and this is how you can confirm that the information on it is true. So I love this certificate of analysis. It will break everything down. And in the CBD industry right now, what's been found actually is that more than 70% of online CBD products are mislabeled. And they either have substantially more or substantially less CBD than is advertised either on that web page or even on their label, right? And 25% that are labeled to have CBD in them actually have no CBD in them at all. And it's understandable. There's little to no regulation in this industry right now. So manufacturers really could claim that a CBD product contains maybe no THC or a certain potency of CBD. And the opportunity to really fudge those numbers is really compounded. So the certificate of analysis really creates a certain transparency for you and I and anybody who's going to consume it. But also, more importantly, when you have a certificate of analysis of this quality, it's going to help regulators to clearly identify exactly what is and what isn't inside any, given hemp extract.
Thank you. And what I find really amazing is that actually Green Compass has that QR code. I don't know if you mentioned that, Tracy, on the bottom of every bottle. So you can just scan that and see it for yourself if you pick up one of our bottles. So, okay.
Yep, and here's just more. You've got, so there are very, very, very few certified organic hemp farms, but even fewer that are certified USDA organic and are also certified hemp. What do we have? I've lost it. The hemp.
Hemp Authority Seal of Approval.
There you go. All these things are running through my mind. But and what we've got with Green Compass is really a company that wasn't founded out of a desire to jump into this industry, right? I mean, Green Compass was founded out of a family's needs, and really my brick and mortar businesses, my medical clinics, were founded out of the same need, right? So Sterling and Meredith Cook, the founders of Green Compass, Meredith ended up having severe postpartum depression, right? And I think any woman either can relate or know somebody that can relate to that. And it really can be devastating. It can be life altering. And they didn't know where to go. And, her brother said, I kind of heard that CBD works for that. Rather than, going out and going to a gas station to buy some CBD, which no one should ever do. We've already discussed quality and the importance of it. But so they started growing their own hemp on their organic farms. I mean, they're sweet potato and cucumber farmers. That's what they've done for more than 6 generations. They know how to do farming right, without the chemicals, without the pesticides, without the herbicides, without the all of it, garbage, and then as and Meredith is also, a person that kind of really immerses herself into studying and learning. She started learning about the extraction process. And what she learned is that the cheapest route to extracting oil is to use other chemicals. So if you are extracting an oil that is grown inorganically, meaning in an environment with chemicals and toxins and pollutants and herbicides and pesticides and growth hormones and whatever else, that's already in the plant, because the plant is what's called a hyperaccumulator. And I view it as kind of a plant version of a human hoarder, right? It's going to absorb all that stuff from the ground that it's growing in, as well as the environment where it's growing. Well, then you marry that with the extraction process. And the cheapest way to do that, like I talked about, is utilizing additional chemicals, things like hexane, butane, paint thinner, acetone. I mean, think about those words. Like, can you imagine going, hey, honey, can you bring me the acetone? Because it's time to drop it under my tongue. I mean, you just wouldn't do that, right? So why would you marry that extraction process with the things that are in this plant that's grown poorly? You're putting all of that into your body. So it's of utmost importance that you have a product that is grown without all the garbage, and you extract it using something called CO2 extraction, which really just uses mild pressure and heat to pull those oils out so that your body is able to use them immediately. So we've got here some quality indicators. CO2 extraction, that is the mild heat and pressure. Absolutely, in my opinion, the best extraction method. The hemp flower. So you've got people, and if you've been researching CBD, you're going to see all kinds of products out there, and you'll see things called whole plant. Now, is whole plant bad? No, I think the stalk and the stems, I think all that kind of stuff is beneficial, but I think it's more beneficial in an industrial way for textiles, right? For making clothing, for making ropes and bags and other things. Absolutely, it has a place. But as far as medicine, the highest concentration of that medicinal CBD is going to be found in the flower part of the hemp plant. And so Green Compass has chosen to hand harvest, hang to dry. We've actually got pictures of the plants hanging in our I don't know what you call them, buildings, warehouses, they're buildings, hand hung. And what that does is it draws that CBD, everything, into the flower. And then we use only the flower part for any of our oils and products. Now, if you've used CBD oil in the past, you may have used a product that was very dark in color, had a very strong kind of earthy aroma, if you will. And when you looked at your dropper, the oil can be any color. I've seen dark green, dark brown. You've got your RSOs that are almost black and a tar kind of consistency. The Green Compass products are going to be very, very light in color to almost clear. Very, very pure product. Now, our carrier is going to be an organic coconut, which is more than 60% MCT. And again, what that means is it's going to be able to cross the blood-brain barrier and address benefiting all organ systems in the body.
Great. Thank you so much. Honestly, I had no idea about all of these things before I learned about CBD, that there are really are true differentiators. It's really quite incredible. So I really appreciate you going through all that, Tracy Lee. I'm going to look in our chat right now before we talk a little bit about Green Compass, because I want to see what questions we have here. Let's see. This one you might have answered, but let's just readdress it. Is how supportive is the medical community of CBD? We talked a little bit about it. I don't know if you have anything else to share.
It's a great question. And I'll tell you, I employ doctors, I employ full medical staff. And what I found in not only employing, but searching for when I began opening these medical clinics, it was, a little bit new. I went into Florida and I began opening very quickly, opened up 7 clinics in a year. And what I found is that doctors would come in and go, this is going to be a piece of cake. Yep, I'll take this job. And they thought that it was going to be some kickback job. Well, then they go through training and learning about the plant and the not only the massive benefits, but also there are over 500 compounds to this plant, right? And how does one interact with the other, and how does it benefit certain conditions? And really, it took not only that education, but also working with patients to see the benefits. So the answer to the question is, the short answer is, it's becoming increasingly more embraced by the medical community. Far more so today with the amount of patients that are utilizing it as medicine than, even just a couple of years ago. So I've got doctors that came to me and didn't really believe in the plant, didn't really understand that it would work, but thought that it would be an easy job. And they have completely converted to the other side of thinking, where they have replaced all Western medicine with this plant and have actually helped. I know that my clinics to date have just over 39,000 patients that we've been able to kind of wean off of Western medicine prescriptions and replace with. And I'm not encouraging anybody to do this on their own. If you have any desire to use cannabis in any way, shape, or form, I would certainly encourage you to discuss it with your doctor. But that's what I've seen in my clinics with my medical staff. And, if you look even at, from the FDA standpoint, there must be some kind of embracing going on with cannabis. Otherwise, we wouldn't have Big Pharma that's come out with their own kind of synthetic version of the plant. You've got Marinol that's being used for cancer patients. You've got Epidiolex that's being used for anti-seizure medications. There are 3 that are widely used. There are 5 that are being used, but 3 are very, very popular. The difference between those and the plant is that they're created in a lab, and there are lots of additional ingredients, including artificial sweeteners that I'm not a fan of, but you've got those that have been originally embraced by the medical community. And all of that is sort of evolving into the understanding and education on what the plant itself can do. So I do see it trending to where I think it's going to be widely recommended by the medical community.
And thank you so much for that perspective. And I would love to add a couple of things on that I was thinking about when you were talking, is that as you shared before, Tracy Lee, with the regulations, right? So things are changing. So it really is an exciting time, because while the medical community as a whole hasn't embraced it, like you're saying, it's growing. And what's really fascinating is, if anyone's interested in looking at research, you can go on nih.gov, and that's the National Institute of Health. There are thousands of research papers, clinical research papers. So it is being researched. And so it's an exciting time and a growth time as more comes out about CBD and the value of it. We're just blessed that, Tracy Lee has had so much experience really before, this trend has started, and before, all the regulations, that with the hemp being legalized to grow in all 50 states. So it really is an exciting time. And what Green Compass found, actually, when the organization started, they were actually telling their doctors about it. So that's how new it is. So we do feel that it's an exciting time for us to have a responsibility to even educate more. And this is another great question for you, Tracy Lee. It said, what about interaction with other drugs? Many people are on antidepressants and other agents. What is the recommendation?
So absolutely, absolutely, it can it can interact with drugs. So here's the way that works: is you've got medications, and when your doctor prescribes certain medications, they might come with a warning label, or your doctor might even verbalize it to you. Do not take these medications with grapefruit or grapefruit juice, right? I don't know if anybody's ever heard that before, but what's really important to know about why that is because you've got enzymes in your liver that actually break down those medications so that your body can put them to work, right? Now, cannabidiol is safe, but it also acts the same way that grapefruit might. And what that means is that that enzyme that's in your liver, it's called the cytochrome P450s. And if you're taking that medication and you're either using CBD or you're consuming grapefruit or grapefruit juice, it inhibits, it stops the enzymes, the cytochrome P450s, from actually metabolizing that medication so that it can go to work in your body. Hopefully I'm explaining that properly so that you understand it. The enzymes are there, they break down the medications, they can break down the cannabidiol so that your body can utilize it and your body will benefit from it, right? Well, that is the only way that they have found so far that cannabidiol can interact with medications. Now, I want to give you a little bit more information on that. The studies that have been done to determine if cannabidiol can affect medications were done on a broad range of patients, all with different conditions and different things, right? Different medications that they were using. And the point where the cannabidiol was affecting the production or the effectiveness of the cytochrome P450 enzymes is when those patients were on extremely high doses of CBD. So somebody that's taking the standard dosage amount more than likely is not going to see any negative effect or interaction with their medications. But if they choose, and what do I mean by standard amount or average amount? Anything under 100 milligrams a day is pretty average. I can tell you that our most popular tincture is going to be a 500 milligram. And if you do one dropper, which is a 1 milliliter amount of that, that milligram, that 500 milligram, you're going to end up with 8.3 milligrams of CBD. Now, if you double that, certainly you're going to get what? Almost 17 milligrams. So to get all the way to 100 or more is a tremendous amount of CBD. Now, we even have a 2,500 milligram CBD tincture. And even with that, you're only getting 83 milligrams of THC with a dosage. So I don't like to, I'm not a doctor and I'm not making any medical claims, but I don't want you to think that, oh, I'm safe. Certainly check with the doctor if you're taking any medications, especially those that, do inhibit the cytochrome P450. But in my opinion, with a standard dose, you're going to be safe.
Great. Thank you. So those were our two main questions. Does anyone else have a question? You can either unmute yourself or you can put it in chat. No question at this point? Okay, well, I'm going to just close up with a few things. If you think of a question.
Can I have a question?
Oh,
yes.
Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes.
Can I ask a question? Or
yes.
two?
I'd love for you to.
I noticed that Tracy Lee just said she is not a doctor. And just listening to you, I came in a little late and I actually thought you were a doctor or at least some healthcare professional. And my question is this. What are some of the occupations that the CBD industry is spawning? And earlier you had mentioned training and doctors and so on down in Florida. My follow-up question is, and what are some of the qualifications that one would need to become a part of the industry, or the qualifications that would align with some of the occupations that the industry is spawning, if I'm not too confusing?
Let me see if I can answer part of that, Laura. You might have some insight on that as well. So as you stated, or as I stated, and you heard, yes, I am not a doctor. My medical training is limited to going through medical school far enough to become a midwife. But I walked away from that years ago. I own medical clinics, and so I employ doctors and medical staff. And so the training that I was speaking of is a training that I put together in order to educate my staff so that they could serve our patient base to the best of our ability. My whole goal with opening medical clinics that really focus on compassionate care is to provide the very, very best medical care and understanding. So that's where that came from. Your question about which medical kind of industries or backgrounds are going to
what are some of the possible occupations being spawned by this CBD industry? Are there any? I, for instance, was interested in doing an MSc. I was told about this and I said, I have some interest in this thing. Maybe I would do the MSc at UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And then I had to think, now after doing this master's in science, and I can't remember the full title, but it has to do with cannabinoids, etc. What would I be doing in the industry? So that's what I'm asking. What are some, I know you run clinics and so on, and you employ, it would seem, mainly health professionals. I am an associate professor, and I'm thinking of my next life. I'm Jamaican, you may ascertain from my accent, and I have a very strong interest in this industry. And I was just thinking, what are the occupations out there? Are there any? Or are we still the doctor, the pharmacist, the farmer planting the hemp? Are there any occupations being spawned by this industry that myself and anybody else who might not be the doctor, the nurse, the pharmacist, the farmer, who is interested in the industry could get into?
Sure, absolutely. So to answer your question in two parts, if you're interested in the actual brick and mortar aspect of it, which I can tell you myself, I am well into 7 figures invested into medical clinics to open them. Every state is going to be different as far as, which medical professional can participate. In Florida, it's limited to MDs and DOs, but there are other states that maybe would, allow a PA or somebody else as far as recommending. I think we finished out 2019 at just over 700 million in the CBD industry, but it's anticipated or projected to be at more than 24 billion by the end of 2023. Very short period of time for dramatic growth. So what I think we're going to see is a tremendous amount of industries that are spawned from CBD becoming legal in all 50 states. Now, the other part of that is what we're talking about here, the opportunity to not only change lives and educate people with CBD by starting a home-based business. You've got minimal, startup costs. You don't have any monthly overhead, but yet you're able to impact a lot of lives, and you can do it from something as simple as this platform we're using here, or you could continue to educate yourself. And I'm happy to send you to different websites that have trainings and certifications where you can actually become maybe a traveling speaker, or you can become an educator in the CBD industry. But in my opinion, there's nothing like a home-based business for financial benefits, for sure. Not only can you help people understand this medicine, but you can also offer them the opportunity to make enough money to cover the cost of their medicine. And to me, that's a win in both aspects. So I don't know if I answered all of your questions, but I think that I don't think we can anticipate everything that will be spawned from this industry with that kind of projected growth.
But you sure did. Is it going to be possible to get a copy of this information provided here today, this PowerPoint in the screen share?
Yeah, so we will be recording this presentation. So it is recorded, so we will be able to share this presentation and this recording. And to Tracy Leah's point really is that there is, you know, that's why we're hosting this today, is that there are so many questions because this market is really growing and people need to be educated. And as I shared at the beginning of this webinar, that has always been a passion of mine, is to educate people on wellness. And so for me personally, I'm not a healthcare provider. However, I come from a background in healthcare and working with doctors and working with nurses and working with healthcare administration. This is a great platform for me to reach out, help other people, because that's what I love to do, as well as be part of this growing industry. And, you know, and like Tracy Lee said, there's a lot of certifications out there for folks who aren't currently a nurse or a doctor that you can get in CBD, cannabis certifications, healer certifications. So I think that we don't even know yet. And that's the exciting thing about, as you had mentioned, you know, looking what's next, is that we're kind of creating what's next with a wellness solution that comes from a plant, which is really amazing.
Sounds good.
Well, we hope we helped to answer your questions. Before I wrap up, I want to be sensitive to everybody's time. Are there any other questions that we can answer? Okay, well, if you think of any, save them, because I'm just going to wrap up really quickly. I wanted to share a photograph of our founders. Tracy Lee spoke about them, as well as our farmers. We're based out of North Carolina. This company only started 14 months ago. And because of the quality of what we've made, and they line up with everything that Tracy Lee shared over this presentation today, and because by word of mouth alone, this company has sold over $11.5 million of CBD in 1 year. Our humble little company that was founded by, you know, a woman who had the love for her children to give her children a clean CBD has grown just by people telling each other about it. And their goal was, hey, maybe we can help people, and maybe with that help we can, you know, sell about $1 million. And we obviously did a lot better, and that's really because of the passion and the heart of the company and what we're truly all about. And really quickly, this just gives you just an overview of everything Tracy Lee already said. I mean, we do have a passion. You know, we want to help people feel and live better. Standards are the highest quality, our organic certification, our hemp authority seal of approval, and we're experts in the industry. You know, Sterling Cook, our founder, he's one of the largest organic sweet potato farmers in the world. So he knows agriculture, he knows farming, and we're also partnering. You know, Tracy Lee mentioned earlier about, you know, studies. Our company is working with the University of North Carolina Agricultural Department in 2 areas. We train other farmers because we want to help other farmers with their business. You know, farming is a tough industry, and they see that helping them grow hemp the right way can help their business and help their families. And the other thing that we've done is we have a lab on UNCW, and we are going to be working with them on research and development of new technologies to deliver CBD. But what we won't do, and what our CEO always said, is we will never, ever compromise quality for a new technology. Our goal is to get CBD in people's bodies so it makes them feel their best so they can live their best. And so we have tinctures, we have products for animals, we have pain patches, we have lotions, bath ball. I love those bath soaks, by the way. So there's a lot of different solutions that we have, and our mission truly is to be a leader in this industry and to educate people like we did today. And I'm so grateful that we were able to get Tracy Lee on the schedule to speak with all of you. And before we close up, I wanted to throw it out there one more time if anyone had any other questions. If not, then we will just thank you for your time today and choosing to be with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Yay. Good job.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank